Hey, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Want to welcome you to Heart with Dan and Angela. And we're just glad you guys showed up today. We want to talk about a subject today that, not a lot of people want to talk about. And it's something that, a lot of people keep hidden. And the reason they keep it hidden is because the church always talks about abstinence, abstinence from sex, chastity. I wrote down a bunch of words here: sexual abstinence, moral purity, celibacy, vows of chastity, virginity preservation, sexual restraint. And my question was, and what I wanted to talk about was the danger of sexual chastity enforcement. And I know that was the case in our kingdom, Paul. I don't know if it was it the same in Worldwide Church of God.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are the same.
Yeah. Well, the thing I was thinking about, I know when I was in the hall and, yeah, I was kind of coming on board, you know what I mean? I was born into it, but I was kind of getting baptized and meeting some sisters, and I wasn't baptized yet, but I saw a sister I really liked. And anyway, we started to have sort of a friendship. And I'll tell you what, the elders, they saw me from a mile away. They were like these big hawks, that sit up on a fence, and are like, aha, yeah, there's Brother Clark. He's looking at one of our sisters. Yeah, oh my God. And so I mean, I'm telling you, within it wasn't even a week, they had like this special needs talk. All of a sudden, the girl that I liked, her sister, her husband was an elder. So all of a sudden, he marches up to the platform, and I'm sitting down next to the girl named Holly, and I'm sitting down next to her, and he goes up there and he ripped me a new ass in front of the hall.
Oh
He didn't
God.
say my name, but he said, could you imagine a sister dating a brother that hasn't been, approved before Jehovah, that's unbaptized, that hasn't proved himself to Jehovah?
He was talking to his daughter.
Yeah, to his sister's daughter.
Ah.
And anyway, his sister. And so I was like, oh my God. So I put my head down, and he was shaming her, and he was shaming me for having this ordinary liking, this ordinary attraction that was supposed to be normal. I was supposed to see this girl, like her, and then say, wow, I want to get to know her. But Elder goes, like this on top of my head and smacked me down. And I'm like this. I wanted to hide. I was up in the front row and I wanted to hide. I was going, oh my God, he's talking about me. My ears were glowing, and I'm like, where the hell can I go? And and so that happened again and again. And I know I've told you guys the story of the masturbation story.
Yes, yes.
Where I went in and and I heard in the Watchtower, if any man is done this, he's unclean. And his eyes are making him stumble. And if your eyes are making you stumble, what does it say? Pull them out, pluck them out. Well, I wasn't going to do that. And then it says also, if you masturbate, then you're sinning against your own flesh. It was some kind of weird thing. And I was like, I'm sinning against my own self. I don't know what they meant by it.
And you're spilling the seed. I mean, at least in Worldwide, it was that you're spilling the seed that you
Yeah.
become babies.
Yes. Well, for us, it was like, it wasn't even that. It was like if you spilled the seed, you were unclean, and you were to go outside the city and remain unclean for a certain amount of time. I don't know if it was a week or a month, but it was guilt, and more guilt. And I got to the point where they were going to disfellowship me. They were ready to disfellowship me. They put me on, public reproof because I went in there like 3 times. They were like, we want you to report back. I remember the guy's glasses were down, and they're like, we want you to report back and tell us how you're doing. And it had to have been a personal joke. It had to have been a joke because I'm the only one, and I really believe this. I was the only one out of 5 million people that had this problem. That had the problem. That had the problem.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe anybody else had the problem.
No.
They were looking down their glasses.
Because they weren't telling them on themselves.
Right.
You're the only one.
Yes.
Because you want to be pure.
Right. And so I wanted to be pure. So I went before them, and they're like, oh, Brother Clark, it's obviously you're entertaining your own thoughts, and we're going to put you on reproof. And then it was on public reproof. And then, the Christian conduct on becoming a Christian. And I was at this point of getting disfellowship. So I started lying. Now, see, that's where the danger comes in. I started lying for preservation, to survive in the kingdom hall, right?
Exactly.
And nobody came alongside me. other than a couple of brothers that I talked to. They're like, I don't discuss that stuff with the elders. Don't go in there and tell them all that stuff. Just, they have to enforce it if you do. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
didn't know better. I was totally honest, totally wanting to go in and become clean and,
Sure.
and get this thing out. But what I got was guilt. What I got was guilt. And what happened after that was a progressive, I don't know what you'd call it, sort of a mental illness, right? Because here's what happens. As you go, right, you see one, you're lying, hey, I'm doing great, everything's going good. I got a hold of this thing, it's right on, right? And then on the other hand, there's a part of you that's saying, I must be really sick. I must be really messed up. I must be part of Satan's world. Because what churches do, and it doesn't matter if it's Jehovah's Witnesses, Christianity, sexuality acted out is sin. Think about that bullshit. Any kind of acting out is sin. We couldn't even hold a girl's hand. If you held a girl's hand, it was going to be warm and you were going to get excited and she was soft and you were going to get in trouble. It was just like that endlessly.
My thought is once you get married, you still continue thinking that you shouldn't be holding your wife's hand, that you shouldn't appreciate the softness, that you shouldn't enjoy her different bodily beauty that God made that you're attracted to. You should be ashamed of that.
Yeah.
The other day on Six Screens, they were saying how, to look at a woman's feet and, be turned on by that and aroused by that, blah, 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 and what's going on with that is disgusting. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? I mean, what do us girls make our nails beautiful for? What do we shave our legs and wear, shorter skirts so that guys will notice our legs and our feet? Why do we wear holes in our shoes? And to make you guys feel, even out of the witnesses, even in the ex-witness community, you still carry on this guilt.
Yes, that's was surprising to me too, that some of the people that have come out are still playing that bullshit elder persona.
Right.
Us men, we're not degraded by looking at a woman's hind end or, looking at a woman and she's beautiful and even, a little bit less, you know what I mean? We're not depraved like that. I couldn't believe that still went on, but it still goes on.
Goes on.
And people are being bullshitted by it. And anyway, that's why partly I wanted to do the talk, because what I realized was this enforcement went back a long way with me, way before Angela. I remember being down in Michigan at my brother's funeral, and I had an old girlfriend that liked me show up, and she was really pretty. And again, there was that hawk, elder, my uncle, looking out, uh-oh, there's Dan again. There's Dan again.
Remember he squeezed your hand like until it hurt?
Yeah, he looked at me. So the girl says, can I come to the funeral with you? Well, I was kind of liking her, I was thinking, boy, she's really pretty, and wow, this is kind of cool.
She's attracted to me.
And so of course the elder sees the attraction building. Now, he could do that. And I don't doubt that his kids were made in the back seat, right? I'm sorry, but his kids were probably made in the heat of the lust in the back seat of a 57 Chevy, right? but not me. But I can't have that, right? I can't even look at this girl. So he picks up the energy, right? He's watching, like that elders do in the Kingdom Hall. They're looking back and forth. Sister looked at him. I saw her look back at him, and I saw her look at her twice. And I've been watching. We need an elders meeting, right? And so here it goes again. So like Angela said, we're sitting in a funeral. In a funeral, my brother's child died. And we're in a funeral. My girl's standing next to me, and she kind of touches my hand and kind of goes like that, kind of just, like this and, like that. And my uncle, he's watching everything, he's looking me over, like I've got to rescue this guy from Bathsheba. You know what I mean?
She wasn't
she wasn't a witness. And so long story short, he looks over at me with this solemn look, really sad. And he goes, Dan, like this, right? Let me shake your hand. He goes like this, and he proceeds to crush the shit out of my hand. Literally, he's like, and I'm going, and he's smiling at my face, and I'm like, Neil, what are you doing? We're in a funeral, right? And he goes, I can crush your hand, but Jehovah can kill you. No. Throw her to the dogs.
No.
And I went, whoa, like, let me go. And I had a hard time. He didn't want to let my hand go. Enforcement. Why enforce something natural?
Is he the same one that said, just pick one, they all have
Yeah,
the same parts?
that's the second part I was going to say.
Oh,
So he says, we'd like you to come back to Georgia with us because, instead of flying to Texas, we'd like to drive you back. We haven't
so
seen
we
you
can
in a
preach to you.
long time. We haven't seen you.
Hours.
And I wasn't baptized yet. So I said, sure, I'll ride back with you, uncle. And so I'm riding back with them, and they had the light on with the car. I swear, it was like a concentration
time.
camp, where they had those
All
little
night.
lights over your head.
Uh-huh.
And they had the inside light on, and they preached and preached and preached and preached. And I thought, what the hell's going on?
How many hours was that?
It was 12 hours,
Ah,
12 hours solid
no.
of preaching. And we get there, and he says, Dan, there's a fine young lady I'd really like you to get to know. And I was like, okay. And he said, she's out back, And I says, okay. So I looked back out there, and all I could see was this guy, working on a car in a t-shirt, all dirty.
With overalls.
Yeah. And I thought, huh. I said, I don't see the girl. And he goes, well, what do you think of her? I forget her name, Susie or Tammy, whatever, right? And I looked over, and I'm like, that's a girl? And she's hanging underneath the car, grease all the way up her elbows, wrenches. And he's like, yeah, she'd make a fine sister. And again, I'm looking at him like, are you joking me? Like, are you serious? You know what I mean? Are you like crazy? And then he looked at me, like Angela said, he looked me in the eye, and he said, Dan, they all have the same movable parts. Just marry one. And the logic behind that, the reasoning behind that is 100% JW ideology. What is JW ideology for getting married? If you can't control yourself, find a girl to get laid. I mean, I'm going to say it graphic. That's what it is. But he said it like this. If you're beyond the bloom of youth and you can't get control of your vessel, it's better for him to marry than to keep on sinning. So you're not telling me to get to know her. You're not telling me to fall in love with her. You're not telling me to gradually get to know, right? Hold her hand,
Make
give her a
friends
kiss,
first.
make friends, hang out a while. No, forbidden, forbidden, forbidden. But it's okay if you can't stop, doing your thing.
To just pick one.
To just pick one. They all have the same, just pick one.
Same movable parts.
They have the same movable parts. Get her in bed, do your thing, for the next 5 years. Or however long.
Until Jehovah comes back.
Yeah, and get over it. That's what a woman's for in the organization. That's why a lot of marriages don't last.
Oh, yeah.
They don't get to know each other. Now, here's the thing. The only one who teaches this kind of crap are your churches. If you were to go into a regular psychological, what would you call it, a social worker or something, or, a psychologist.
Okay.
And you were to tell them about this, if you'd say, I got this problem, and they say, well, what is it, right? And you say, oh, I don't want to tell you, it's bad. I'm really bad, which I did, right? I told the lady that, I said, it's really bad, and then when I told her it was masturbation, she started laughing. Now, what a therapist would do, what a licensed therapist would do, is they would tell you, they would say, well, Mr. Clark, there's a point in your life where you're a child, and then you start growing, right? And you grow into this kindergarten, then you move into more of a teenager, adolescence, what do they call puberty?
Mm-hmm.
And you move into this part of your life where something
starts to wake up.
And you go, okay, what's that? And they're like, it starts to wake up. Your sexuality starts to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, like, you mean like what's happening with me? Yeah, exactly what's happening with you. You get horny, you start seeing the opposite sex, she starts looking cute. You say, boy, that's beautiful. And and this interaction starts. And then you say, well, yeah, but my religion says blah, 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 right? Well, the person who helped me through this when I talked to this lady about it, because like I said, the men were hiding, the men were saying it's never happened to me.
20s at this point.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And the men in the hall were saying that's, they might as well have been saying that's never happened to me. That just doesn't happen. I don't know why that's
Never
happening
has
with you, Brother
happened.
Clark. I don't know why that happens to some brothers that have this problem, but us brothers that don't happen with.
Which just tells me that there's a spirit of lying.
There's
in
a
that
lying
organization.
spirit.
Really
Yes.
bad too.
Yes.
Really bad.
And so this lady
Even my
tells me,
church.
And so this lady hands me a tape from a monastery, right? And this 90-year-old man, I plug it in, and this 90-year-old man, he's talking, he goes, could you imagine the sexual guilt that would be on a young man in his 20s? if he was told that sexual desire was wrong, could you imagine the mental messed up mind that he would have? That like I've said before, it's a house divided against itself, right? So there's a sexual desire that comes up. There's a sexual desire that starts to grow. It starts to become attracted, and you're told it's wrong. You're told it's bad. All sexuality is bad. Don't go there. It's actually demonic.
And actually, then you get married feeling that way about your own wife, and a wife towards your own husband.
Yes.
And that it's a shameful thing, that the act is shameful, and that you shouldn't enjoy it, and you shouldn't enjoy the body.
Yes.
And that's not how God made it.
No. And that is the
You
point.
ever read what is it? Song of Solomon? Wait, that's not the one. Song of Songs. Oh my God, it's really romantic.
Yeah. And so if God put the desire in me, right? And why did he put it in me? Because he said man would become fruitful and become many and fill the earth. Man and woman, right? Would become, how does it say it again?
Yeah.
Fruitful and become many and fill the earth.
Yeah.
So what would precede the filling of the earth and for a man to be attracted to a woman in a sexual way would be natural, right? It would be totally natural for a man to become attracted to a world, to get excited, to have orgasm. This would be totally natural. But the church has made it perverted.
Yeah.
The church you're sinning against yourself. You're doing this. You shame on you, and all of this stuff. And then we have to deal with this house, this house right here that we live in. Why is it doing this? What did I do wrong? Why was I born into this sin nature? And you're in your head, right? Well, what I realize is why religions do this is it's guilt. And with guilt, you have good slaves. If you have men that are guilty and women that are guilty, and especially sex, what are you going to do, right? You got to deal with it. You got to deal with your own sexual desire. Some get more sexually desire when they're younger, some a little older. Some of you here getting sexual desire at 7, some sexual desire at 12. Most people, I think, are, in their teenage years, 17 on up. But here's the other thing. It says the witnesses used to preach, if you're past the bloom of youth, then you shouldn't have this problem. Now, what is the bloom of youth?
It's different for everyone.
But the bloom of youth, according to the witnesses, are like between 20 and 25.
30.
You don't think you're still going to have a little sexual desire at 25?
Well, what about women? Because women, they have to be included in this.
Right.
And a lot of women do not come sexually excited until they're 45. It's a known fact. So
Right.
Why, I don't know, but a lot of us women don't loosen up, I guess you'd say, emotionally, mentally, probably because some of the verbal and mental emotional abuse when you're younger. But you come into your own around 45 and you start to have desires you never had before. Some men are late bloomers.
Right.
Really late bloomers. So, you can't go by that.
No, and you can't go by that. So a court of witnesses funnel everyone into the same thing. He's past 25 and he should have gotten a handle on this, and he just needs to marry and find a woman to take care of this problem he has. I mean, isn't that crazy that women are going to take care of the problem the man has? I mean, isn't that sickening?
No, and
that's what they say.
And I hate to, this horrible thought just came in my mind, but once he's past you're past the bloom of youth, you should be wanting sex with your wife and
yes.
Right? So then what do? Then they start wanting younger girls because their wife shouldn't be interested in them. So they sort of start to wane. Besides, it was never about love, right? It was just about having sex and having babies. So now those same men want little young girls.
Yes.
Or boys.
So that's the reason that I wanted to do this video, because I'm tired of men lying, especially religious men. Me and Angela did a TV show. You remember we did that television show?
Are you too crazy for God?
Yeah, it was called Are You Too Crazy for God? And
Celebrating life.
Like, what do you want to talk about? And we started to tell them, they said, oh, let the Holy Spirit guide. It was a regular television show.
Sheree Peters on Celebrating Life and Recovery.
Yeah, and we went on there and I just started talking, like I do, pretty open, and I started talking about masturbation and this and that, and they kept turning off the cameras.
Prostitutes and what?
Prostitutes, escorts, and all this stuff. And they kept turning the television off and running out all the elders. You can't talk about this stuff. And I said, well, when are men going to get courageous and start being honest with people, not from this biblical perspective that all sexuality is shame, masturbation, bad, sinning against your body, pluck your eyes out. When are we going to get real? And I said, when are you
Seriously.
men going to start telling these young people that you've been there and done it, or you're still working on it? Yeah,
Right,
you know what I mean?
exactly, Dean. It really is high time, because we can't just keep on living our life full of guilt and shame, because it just leads to more of the same. The more you put under the lid, if you will, and try to cover up, the more you want the same thing. It's like the demons have a heyday.
Suppression.
Yeah,
It builds up. See,
exactly.
suppression, when you suppress a sexual, it really doesn't go away, right? It
No,
just builds and builds and builds, and then it takes some weird form. And the weird form is usually hiding out, going into a porn shop or something, because I didn't have sex, right?
right.
I saw it on a screen or I watched some porn movie, but I didn't have sex. You see, so it takes weird
It
forms.
does. And besides, since you can't do it with any of the girls in the Kingdom Hall, you're gonna have to do it somewhere else
In
outside of the
hiding, in
organization
hiding.
in hiding. And so I've always said that this organization and the one I grew up in should be in jail for causing this. They're the
Yes, it's a lot
cause.
of pain, a lot of
Mhm.
suffering, a lot of shame and guilt that you
Right.
don't have
Have to
to have.
have.
And I'll tell you, me and Angela the other night were listening to Dr. Gilbert from the Vesica Institute, Robert Gilbert, and he actually touched on the subject, and it was called leaky sexual old man syndrome. And some guy was asking him a question, and I think the guy, it was a what was it called, a webinar, and I think the guy was hoping that Robert wasn't going to address it. He goes, what about the old man syndrome? That's, just kind of leaking out, this sexuality kind of coming out of this old man. And Dr. Gilbert just hit him on the head. And he goes, oh, absolutely. He goes, the reason that it's leaking out is because it was never taken care of. He said the desire in these religions where they have, like the Catholics, right? We as witnesses always used to say about the Catholics, oh, it's because they don't let them have sex and they turn into perverts. And so all these sexual guys are looking for these young children, and then they have sex and then they move them to another church.
I hate to say it, but even secretly with the nuns and all that, they would get together in the down underneath the churches and have sex and abort babies under there. All kinds of sick stuff went on. And these poor nuns are they came in there and wanting to be pure and holy, and they end up getting involved with these priests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, when he was talking about this old man sexual, perversion that was coming out of him, I couldn't help but think of this clip I saw of the Dalai Lama with Gaga, Lady Gaga, and she was sitting next to him, and he kept touching her leg, and this guy was pointing it out. It was someone who was shooting a picture of it, and he kept just going like this on her leg because she had tears in her pants, and he kept just touching her leg, feeling her leg, rubbing her leg, and she was kind of going like, is this real? Is somebody filming? Is this like a joke? And then he started getting real close to her, and he started smelling her, and he started doing all this. You can find it online. Just look under Lady Gaga and the Dalai Lama. And it was that coming out. See, that suppression. I'm celibate. I'm clean. I'm holy. I've took a vow of chastity. I don't do that anymore. And yet it's a part of our human nature. For most people, for 99% of our people, human sexuality and expression is a part of our own human nature. It's human nature. It's not perversion like religions teach. It's part of our human nature, because the Dalai Lama in that thing, is my opinion, wasn't allowed or chose not to. Here it comes out in some wacky, weird way. And she was going, ooh, you could tell she was slimed by it. Look it up. Look it up. There was another man me and Angela met one time in a church, and I had him come over. And he just started looking at Angela. And Angela, she talks sweet and nice. And he goes, I can just feel your sexuality just dripping off you.
Oozing, I think he said.
Oozing. And I was like, ooh. And I was like, what is he doing? Like, what the hell is he doing?
Must be a man of God.
Yeah. And we had him over to the house, and he was just getting horny over just listening to Angela.
Yeah, even a monk in Snowmass, Colorado, just couldn't get enough of my lips,
Oh, yeah. He kept going.
Yeah, like,
Yeah,
pump it up,
and I'll tell you something about that too. Me and Angela went out there, and Angela was a witness. We were out at Snowmass, Colorado, and it was a silent monastery, men only, quiet. And two things happened. One was we went into the hermitages where you stayed, and it was
Their
real
buildings
cheap.
outside of the main where all the monks lived. They
Yeah.
were outside, just by a quarter of a mile, and not less than that.
Yeah, people go out there to meditate, to get still. If you're going through a problem, you get yourself a hermitage. It's got a little stove in it, a bed, and a Bible, and no
Little
TV.
kitchen,
Yeah, and you meditate.
beautiful view.
Beautiful view, and you just kind of get out in nature and that sort of thing. Well, I was going in and I saw a picture on the wall, and it was one of the saints. And he goes, "Oh, that's Saint so and so." And I go, "Oh, cool." And he goes, "Yeah, he was a homosexual." And I go, "Oh,
Saint
okay."
Benedict.
I go, "Okay." And I go, "Well, can I look at one of the other hermitages, or whatever?"
Yeah, we don't understand.
Not that I'm not against any of that. If people, I'm not,
Right, I'm sorry.
I don't want to go there, but it was interesting. The thing I learned was that homosexuality was a huge problem in the monastery.
Yeah.
Again, the
huge.
sexual desire that has nowhere to go. So we went to the next one and they said, he's a homosexual and he's a homosexual. And I said, wow, are a lot of the guys out here homosexuals? And he's like, yeah, no, I'm thinking it was a very mystical, holy place.
Right, that
And
didn't go on.
it probably was. But that went on there. That sexual desire was coming
The
out.
energy was oozing out.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
the energy that had been, because they went there probably because they didn't want to face those urges. That may be a very reason that they went to be monks. Maybe they had even been abused by their uncles or fathers or something, and they wanted to escape that and be holy and pure and clean. And they had the sense that if I become a monk, I could be clean and just have that out of my mind. But it creates more of the same.
Yes. And so actually one of the monks, I think Angela was with me. I was talking to the guy, his name was Thomas, and he said, "Oh, Dan," and he's like, what, 78, 80? He goes, "Oh, Dan." And I said, "Yeah, Brother Thomas, what's going on?" And he says, "Oh my God, there was a woman who came out here, to the monastery." And I'm like, "Yeah." "Oh, she was so beautiful." And I said, "Oh, cool, really cute gal, huh?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, but I can't get her out of my mind. I can't get her out of my mind." And I'm like, "Oh wow." So something else going on, with you and the girl in the monastery. You know what I'm talking about. And so, but he was really bothered over something that's natural and normal. And I want to say this. We went outside after the service, and there were all these monks lined up, a whole bunch of them, like 20 of them, right?
After
Remember
the
that?
service, right?
On the sidewalk. They were lined up on the sidewalk all the way out. And the people were coming out shaking their hands. The guys were shaking the hands. But when the women went by, every one of them were like, "What, Angela?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They were like this. They wanted to be kissed on the lips by the sisters. That's sexual desire oozing out, oozing out. So is it better to let this stuff happen when you're 17, when you go and a woman kisses you back, you give her, you hold her hand, it feels warm, you might have felt her out, you know what I mean? Whatever, right? I mean, you let this stuff gradually work itself out. And that's what this doctor said, this doctor, Robert Gilbert from Vesica. He said it will actually work itself out. That if the desire's allowed to come forth, come up, do its thing, you're with the woman, you kissed her, you had a good time, it felt good. And it actually has an expression. And he said this, he said, "I wished more people would be allowed to go down their prodigal son journey," right? Which is, doing these things. And they would actually be more better adjusted than the man who's older and wants to cheat on his wife. The man who's older that just got married because his wife had the same movable parts, that never got to know her. All of a sudden, he's out there and he sees a woman that thinks he's attractive and kind of wants to get to know him. Well, that's more attractive than a man who just wants a woman to be a bed to slap in. You know what I'm saying? And so, because of not allowing themselves to let nature, to let nature take care of itself, and nature will take care of itself. It will sort itself out. You've been with a couple of girls and a couple of guys. You kiss, you made out, whatever you did, but that will sort itself out. And of course, you have the whole talk about, don't get her pregnant, all that kind of stuff. But once that plays out a little bit, it's kind of out of you. It's kind of, yeah, it's still, the desire is still there. The desire to look at a beautiful woman, to look maybe even twice, right? If you look twice, you've already done it, right?
According to their church.
Yeah, you've already done it if you look twice.
I don't think so.
And so this is dangerous. This is dangerous. You know, what did Dalai Lama was embarrassing. It had to have been embarrassing to him. Imagine if he looked at
Yeah.
it later, he just out of control. You know what I mean? And to the point where Gaga was very, very nervous. And so it's the same in the organization. Now we heard the other night on the 6 screens that the women, some of the younger women, are sexting the older men. You know, like sending them pictures of themselves, selfies, cute selfies, you know, little teasers and stuff. But isn't that another form of the sexual desire coming out in a covert, weird, you know what I mean? Yeah, you imagine when they saw each other. Say you shot a picture of yourself and a guy in his muscle shirt, right? Sitting there, you know, all muscular, right? And shoots a picture and sends it to the sister. And the sister goes, ooh, you know, he's got muscles, he's cute. What are they going to think when they see each other in the Kingdom Hall?
Oh, man.
You see what I'm saying?
Sparks are gonna be flying.
That's what I mean. Or the younger sister, for whatever reason, that likes the older man. Yeah, you know, that shows, you know, a top shot here and shows a little bit here, and you know, the brother gets that and goes, oh, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Then he sees her in the hall and she kind of smiles at him, and you know, it's sexual energy. It's sexual energy that's been pent up and not allowed to give off as it will. It's been pent up, and eventually it just goes like this. What are you
I
gonna
mean,
say?
when you're younger and that stuff's going on, or you're not married, then that's normal.
Right.
And it's right, and it's just what goes on, right? And girls do want to show off their bodies, and how else would guys want them? I'm just saying, I mean, God
I
made
see
it
it.
this
I see it
way.
with my kids.
Yeah.
I mean, they dress up cute and nice
They're wanting
tops.
to
They like to show
attract.
their legs. They're at the best. They're at the
Right.
part of their life where their
Well,
bodies
yeah.
are nice and their
That's
you know
right.
legs look
You
good.
don't
And,
get that again,
right.
and so they naturally are trying to attract the other opposite sex. Look,
Naturally.
animals do it. The birds do it. Turkeys do it. They all do it. It's natural. It's normal. But we're told that it isn't, and it really makes a big monster out of a lot of people. A lot of guilt, at least a lot of shame, because what's normal you're told is not, and then you go hiding from yourself, from the world. You just are a mess,
Yeah,
and that makes me sad.
it
It
is.
shouldn't have to be that way.
Yeah, it's no different in Christianity, guys. The celebrate
No.
recoveries, a lot of the celebrate recoveries were bigger than the churches. The people that went to celebrate, and they were on drugs, they were on this, but a lot of them, probably 90% of them, were what they called sexual addicted. Not that they were sexual addicted, but maybe they were now. Maybe they're sort of perverted, right? They're just loving porn. You know, I believe this. If we were allowed to develop sexually normally, I don't think there'd be a porn shop in business.
Oh no.
I don't think there'd be some X-rated show. A guy go, oh, you know, he's just getting out with a girl, you know, big deal. Yeah, you know, but because you're suppressed, because you're held back, I wonder how much I can see. I wonder how much I can, you know what I mean?
Well, there's that saying, what you resist persists.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a powerful thing. And the Bible says that if you resist the devil, he will flee from you. So in certain situations, that works. You're tempted to lie, maybe say, so you turn to God and you say, oh Lord God, please help me to do the right thing here. But I'll tell you what, sometimes these bodily feelings and emotions, sexually especially, they're very powerful. And you don't, a lot of time in that situation, you don't resist the devil and he'll flee from you. What you resist actually persists.
Yeah,
And so this is a little bit of a conundrum. This is.
it is.
And Dan told me when we were going to celebrate recovery, he says, Angela, you know what these guys need? They just need to get it out of their system and just live it out. And that's the best way to get over it. I'm like, Dan, you can't say that to these Christians. You can't be saying that. I was horrified. Like, that's very bad advice. But now, I realize God allowed us to go on a prodigal son journey for a reason. I think there's a whole lot of reasons, but he does want us to get it out of our system. And Dan said this. He said, these normal kids in the world who are just in regular families, not super religious or anything, their parents pay for them to go to college, and they know that they're going to mess around and do the thing that they did when they were in college, and they're going to get it out of their system. So they're oats. That's what they literally say. I've heard them say it. And so that ends up making normal people who don't have these, they're not sexually oppressed. They're normal. And so that's interesting to me. You know that, Dan?
Yeah. And that's what, and that's the thing. They say that, we asked somebody one day, we were out at a house and we said, we had to plug the computer in. It's about low on battery. It's probably got enough to last, but we just plug it in. But anyway, yeah, we asked a guy, I said, oh, my kid's in school. And I said, yeah, what they taking up? They go, oh, they're just, is that the right one?
Yeah, it is.
He says, oh, they're just sowing their wild oats. And we're like, sowing their wild oats? What does that mean? And he was like, just getting out the sexual energy, getting kind of past that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
This will be
so
okay.
anyway, it was very interesting, but in the world and where people are educated, they recognize that this is part of nature. This is part of a naturalness that happens. And they realize, just like they realize in themselves, and that's why I like this one guy, because he wasn't a liar. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't saying, "Oh, I've never been that." I knew a guy one time. He was a creep. He was a fundamentalist Christian, and his kid was waking up to that, right? Kind of waking up to that desire. And I remember him telling me, he's like, that boy of mine. That's how he said it. He was a big guy.
Oh,
He
I
was
heard of
big.
this.
And he goes, that boy of mine, he goes down that road. And he was bragging about the girls he had, almost like the notches on his belt. He was talking about the gym that he went to, and he says, I know those girls aren't wearing nothing under those spandex. That's the way he talked. But yet his boy, he was going to knock the hell out of. And that's what I think of when I think of the elders. They have done all this. They have had sex. They have played, they have messed with girls. They've done that. We all have done that. So who are we now to say absolutely not? And I mean, this guy was like iron fist. The elders are iron fist. There's this enforcement that they have to have, knowing that this child is going to go through this with no grace. Think about this, guys, with no grace.
Right.
That's what makes me sick.
Yeah.
Or the other hypocrites that pretend it's not me. It's not happening to me.
I've never had that problem.
It's terrible. So what happens is, what I don't want is, I don't want any more guilt over this. The reason I did this video is I don't want you to suffer in guilt. Go down and talk to a therapist. Talk about the natural progressive of adolescence and what happens. And look at what the Bible says. Become fruitful, become many, and fill the earth and subdue it. You're going to be sexually desirous of another woman. She's going to be sexually desired of you. Sparks are going to happen. Shit's going to happen. Get over it. You don't have to guilt yourself to death. It's part of human nature, and the rest is
Yes.
BS.
Amen to that. And something, that there's a lawyer in particular whose sister is fuming mad at all the lies that he, as a lawyer, has done for the governing body in all these just various countries that he's allowed to work in. He's got whatever you call them, stars or whatever, to be allowed to work as a lawyer in all these countries. And he lies his ass off about all the things that, that they're doing to people. And he'll just lie, saying that they're not doing that. They haven't done that. They never have done that. They don't believe in that, on and on and on. And the truth is, they I hate to say it, guys, but they do know what they're doing. And
Yeah.
I personally believe that anyone, even in the court of law, if they really looked at it, they would say, no, this is mind control. Absolutely, this is mind control. Because look, that when you oppress people and you make them feel guilty and shamed, you shame a child. That they're going to grow up full of shame and guilt. You shame them, they will grow up feeling the same. That is just the way it is. So they know what they're doing, and they know that produces children that will obey to the nth degree. They'll do anything that you say. We've heard horrible stories about young women, young little girls who are being groomed to be a certain way, beginning at a very young age, by people in the Jehovah's Witnesses, like head up people, and training them to be the kind of girls that will do the kind of things that they all want. And it's really sick, but that is mind control, because they know what they're producing. And they're also producing the same thing in the men by forbidding, you know, what you want. Look, Adam wanted, and him and Eve wanted what they wanted. And, you know, in the end, they had to have it. What you resist persists. Even God knows that. But the
Yeah.
sex is not a wrong thing, though. God made it and it's beautiful and it is pure. And what God made is good and very good. And who are we to call it not? Who are we to call it dirty or evil or wrong or, you know,
Demonic,
demonic?
satanic.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Like enjoying a woman's feet, you know, and being desirous of their beautiful, gorgeous feet and getting kind
Feet,
of
breasts,
turned on.
face, lips, butt, you know, whatever.
Yeah, yes, like what are the you just an effing machine is what is wrong with you. We're not to be men are not to enjoy our beautiful breasts and to enjoy sucking them. And I'm sorry, I'm just being graphic, I know, but the truth is that God made it that way, and it talks in the Song of Solomon all about the romance of all of
It
that.
sure
God
does.
is romantic. God would not make us that way if He didn't intend for us to enjoy it. You know, what does it say? Enjoy the breasts of your for be forever satisfied with the breasts of your beloved or something like. Anyway, read Song of Solomon. See how romantic God is if you want to see what governing body is hiding from you.
Yeah.
God is romantic and God does love. He made our women's beautiful bodies the way that He made them for a reason, so that men would enjoy them. It's for enjoyment. So to feel guilty for that, you will now, if you're trained that way as a youngster, as a teenager, to have shame and guilt over that, you will carry that into your marriage and you will teach your children the same and hide things and maybe even inappropriate things go on because you were trained in a wrong way, full of guilt and shame. That just causes more of the same and worse and beyond.
And it leads to everything.
It
Like I
does.
said, in a lot of families, you hear incest, you hear all these
Absolutely. That's because of
perversions, and
this.
you know, all kinds of stuff,
Right.
all because of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I said, my parents, you know what I mean, went through all this stuff and went through the guilt and shame.
Yeah.
It's time for that to
It,
stop.
it,
And
it
I heard
is.
this saying one time. It says sometimes the only way out is through.
Mm.
You've got to go
Mhm.
through it.
Mhm.
So that's what I was trying to say in the 12 step one time when, you know, everyone was just trying to, what would you call it, resist. And sometimes I said, well, maybe you're at a point where you just got to go through. You just got to, you know, find that girl or whatever, and you know, have the good time and see what that is. And you know, again, that was a Christian place where they just told you when you say I believe in Jesus and your desires are over and everything's good. And it wasn't true, of course. And so anyway, but anyway, that's all we want to say about that today. We just want you to
We
think
do believe
about
in
that.
prayer, okay? It's not that we don't
Yeah,
believe in
we
prayer. We
believe in
believe in God
prayer.
helping.
We believe in self-control.
Right,
You got to have some
absolutely.
self-control,
Absolutely.
but this thing that wakes up is very hard. It's
It's very
impossible.
powerful.
It's like a desire for food that reoccurs. You know, it dies down, then it reoccurs again. It dies down, it reoccurs again. And so we got to
And
be practical. You know, a lot of people go insane
yeah,
with
yeah,
that
yeah,
when
yeah.
they're told that's bad,
Absolutely.
that's wrong, you're this, you're that. I know people who have thought they were really part of Satan's seed. I know a guy that studied with the witnesses and said, I could never do that because I've been possessed by the devil because I can't overcome that. And he really thought he was a
Well,
devil just over a natural desire of the flesh.
well, you know, one thing's interesting too is that we are born with DNA with familiar spirits from family
Family,
members.
yep.
So you'll see that like this grandfather was sexually addicted. You'll hear about the things that he did, and then they say a lot of times it'll skip a generation and it'll go to somebody, and that after skipping a generation to somebody else. I have seen it in my family, just of the rampant of, you know, alcoholism. It just keeps coming down the pipe, down the family line. And if you end up that person, well, you know, look, it's going to be what it's going to be, and you're going to do the very best you can with it. But is it entirely your fault? No. And will God help? Yes, God has done a great and mighty thing to help Dan after he went and
I went
sowed his
through it.
oats
I went through it.
well,
Yeah.
very well and beyond. I met him right on the heels of it, and so
I'm
yeah,
glad I did.
yeah, he got it out of his system. But I don't know. I do feel for you if it's running in your family, and it's just going to be what you're going to have to bear. And I don't know. I just think that God loves us no matter where we're at. And sometimes men have to go through things, and it does end up in results of divorce, because things weren't right in the marriage, things weren't right in the way that they were taught in their religion, and it just led to that. And they make these mistakes. But what I don't think should happen is that you should forever hate yourself. I think you have to come to the point, if you have done that, to absolutely understand that there are reasons that are beyond what you even are aware of, like family DNA, familiar spirit type things, and ways again of being taught in your religion that have brought this about. And so you just do the best you can, and you may get divorced, you may come to some shame because of it, but the truth is you're still a worthy person to be loved. And I truly, truly believe that no matter what anyone has ever done, they're worthy to be loved and they're absolutely forgiven. To me, I believe that is why Jesus did come and why he died, to cover those things that we cannot do, those miscreations, those mistakes that we have done. And so don't beat yourself up forever
No.
if you've done some really bad things.
Not at all.
Just know that you're doing the best you can, and maybe
Just
let
working
yourself,
with what you have.
right.
Making a lemon
let
into
yourself,
lemonade.
right. Maybe let yourself off. Maybe it's time to let go of that shame and that guilt and let God take it, because he wants to. And he doesn't, it says that he puts our sins into the ocean of forgetfulness. And he puts them in there as far as the east is from the west. He remembers them no more. So when they talk in the Bible about, having to go before God and say, well, look, if you put it under the blood of Christ, then it is forgotten, and it is put in the sea of forgetfulness, and it will not be brought up when you see God face to face. I truly do believe that. But I do believe that we have to let, I personally believe that we need to let those things go and trust God that he took care of it. Somehow or the other, we've got to trust that God's got a plan and he's taking care of it, and trust him with it instead of holding on to the guilt and stuff, which is exactly what the enemy would have you to do the rest of your life. Because then,
Destroy you.
right, because I've noticed that men who are able to be free this way. Dan and I were talking about a movie called Midnight in Paris. Now, I never thought I would like such a movie because it's got some sexual immorality. Like, I believe that you should be married before you have sex. It doesn't work out that way for most people, but I do believe that's the right and proper way. However, in this movie, that's not how it was. We had amazing people, Salvador Dali and all these wonderful artists. It was back in that day that it was mainly, the movie was all focused around. But in that day, they didn't have hangups about sex. They didn't worry about all that sexuality. They just did what came naturally, and they had no guilt or shame about any of it. And you know what happened? What I could not help but notice, that they were super creative and they were so relaxed with themselves, and they just were good in their own skin, and they didn't carry around this guilt and shame. I couldn't help but notice the difference between those people living in that time and the people that are today in heavy duty religious shame and guilt and oppression and suppression. It was an entirely different way of being. And I thought, no,
beautiful.
it was beautiful. It was. And I couldn't help but say, that's beautiful.
And they had all their creative faculties. They were
did.
amazing artists and
Oh, God.
writers and
Oh, yeah.
authors.
Yeah, inspiring women who were inspiring these young men and these artists and these writers. Oh my gosh, all the famous ones, guys, all of them. Hemingway and just all of the amazing ones.
Oh,
And they were just heavily inspired.
yeah, watch that movie, Midnight in
Midnight in
Paris.
Paris, yeah,
Like
really interesting. Anyway, just want to bring that up. Maybe it's time to let go. Let
Yep.
go of some shame and guilt.
Yep. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. We want to thank you for tuning in. And we want to just let you know, any of our videos, feel free to cut, clip, send out, put them anywhere, repost them. We really want you to know they're once they're out on YouTube, you can do what you want with them. And so feel free to use them, maybe to help somebody going through something. We just want you to do that. If you like what you hear, subscribe to the channel. It helps the algorithms, helps the videos go out, gives us a little bigger audience to talk to, and maybe reach some more people. All right, so we just want to thank you for tuning in today. Hope we said something valuable, and please pass it on. If it resonated as true, then pass it on. And we wish you all the best, and we love all you guys.
Yes,
okay,
and you are worthy of love, guys.
Yes.
No matter what, you're worthy.
Yes.
Okay, soak that in.
No more sexual guilt. Stop it.
Amen.
All right. Okay, guys.
Over and out.
Over and out. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.